So good evening, afternoon, late night to everyone. It's fantastic to have over 50 people join us for this session, for this seminar. We had people registering from over 20 countries, which is fantastic. I think we don't have people here from so many places at this moment, but it's great that you have joined us. I'm Adam Bethlenfalvy. I'm one of the organizers of this event, and I will be sort of chairing the proceedings or I'm going to help this event to happen. But actually, I'll also sort of frame it for you. I will just say a few words, if you don't mind, before we get really going about the background. I hope everyone can hear me clearly. Is the sound fine? Is it all right? Great, thanks, Sorrel. And I just invite you to feel free to use the chat. For example, it would be lovely to see where people are here from. So if you can just write your name and the place where you're joining us from in the chat, that would be fantastic. Just to see, where all we are from. And of course, you will be invited to join us in other ways as well, but feel free to use the chat throughout. And it's great to see where all the people are joining us from. I know it's a late night in Beijing, where Xiaoxi is joining us from, and Vaishali is also joining us from India, where it's quite late at night, and it's quite pleasant afternoon, early evening in the UK, and Hungary it's already getting quite dark. Anyway, the background of this event here is a little group of people who have been discussing issues related to process drama and what's called living through drama by Dorothy Heathcote, who are surrounding David Davis. And together with these people, we're thinking about how to develop our discussion. And we thought, beside the need for us to continue and develop our thinking, we thought it would be fantastic to invite people in and to create some sort of community which allows us to think together. And this is the basic idea for this series of events. So as you have seen, it's the first one out of 5 seminars we're going to hold online, one each month. The next one will be on the 22nd of March, and that will be about contextualization and so on. You will find, we'll send the link again where you can find the series and the registration link for the next event slowly. And we also want to keep this as an ongoing discussion. So what we have done is we've created a very simple so-called Padlet. This is an online possibility, Padlet, and we've started collecting things here, and you're allowed and invited to share your thinking, your scenarios, your situations here later. I will put the link in the chat, and we'll also send this out later. I just wanted to share it with you so you can see it at this moment. I'm really glad that we could bring this together, and I'm very grateful for the generous time of David Davis, Chris Cooper, Kostas Amoiropoulos, Xiaoxi, who have really generously allowed us to do this event and have been partners in creating this event. And we'll proceed by starting out and really focusing on practice. What we are planning to do is, David set us all a task. He will be sort of framing this for us, and then we will be discussing what we have come up with, and we will be then inviting you to join this discussion for a short while. And then finally, David will finish with a theoretical discussion of what we have been doing and why he believes this to be interesting, important, and what are the questions that he offers us to take forward. So this will be the process for the next 90 minutes. And I think one last thing, we probably are being funded to create this event, but actually to create videos of this event. It's being recorded by the Cultural Fund of Hungary. We don't know yet. They seem to be, we're still waiting for the contract to be created. In this time of crisis, everything is a question. But it's possible that we'll be creating videos out of these events and also sharing those online later. So if you don't want to appear in the videos, then then please switch your camera off, and also we'll be asking you to keep yourselves muted while others are speaking, but then join in at certain points in the discussion. So I hope everyone who wanted to join us has arrived, and I'll invite David to take over and start this evening by framing the next tasks and the proceedings for us. David.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Can you hear me okay, Adam?
Absolutely, David. You're coming through.
Okay. Hi to everyone. I just wish we were in the same actual space together rather than this virtual one, but this is a wonderful second best. As Adam said, welcome to this first of 5 sessions where we'll explore some aspects of living through drama. And as he said, the idea for this series came from a discussion that Adam, Chris, Kostas, Shalshi, and I had some time ago. The 5 of us have been in regular contact over a number of years, and we wanted to find a way to share our working practice together and our developing thinking. Rather than just set up some Zoom session for ourselves, we decided to open it up for anyone to listen into for free. This means that these are not, strictly speaking, teaching sessions. We won't have breakout rooms or tasks, except for the one you were asked to do and to have with you. It will be we 5 sharing our thinking and practice in these certain key areas for us, that is. I, in particular, stimulated by the useful work David Allen has done in sharing Dorothy Heathcote's archive of work, was keen to bring Gavin Bolton's work into the picture. He branched out away from Dorothy Heathcote's work, as you know, finding his own route and ending with being in role as a central approach for his process drama as an art form. All 5 of us have also found stimuli in Edward Bond's approach to drama. In particular, we found very useful his attempts to open up the process of meaning-making in drama, his focus on the social and the personal, and his criticism of reason alone as the route to human agency. This series attempts to combine some key dimensions of his work and of the legacy of Gavin Bolton in classroom drama. In particular, the drama being planned here is intended to lead into a living through improvisation, that entering and sustaining the role to involve a metaxis process. This will be covered in a later session led by Kostas. Metaxis, in short, involves being in role, being yourself and the role at the same time. I'm starting this series with a session on finding the general in the specific through thematic content and layers of meaning, finding the social order in the most ordinary situation. For example, take an improvised scene of a couple feeding pigeons in the town square. We can find their world in that simple activity. If we dig into it, we could find all sorts of themes, all sorts of content. We could find their relationship, and within it the power structures of society and how they're reflected in relationships. We might find misogyny. We could find our relationship with nature and the extinction of species. We could explore the playing of roles in everyday life. We could even find a way into local democracy and democracy in general through town planning and local bylaws and much, much more. Our coming together here gives us a chance to remind ourselves of why we do what we do. What is education for? What is drama for? Why are we so committed to teaching it? Let me offer a start from my perspective. To be human, we're born to parents, into a culture, born into an era, into a form of society with its own language, regulatory laws, customs, all historically developed, none of our choosing. To paraphrase a famous remark, we're born into circumstances, not of our own making. It's the only way we can be human. Ideologies abound, systems of thought, of how we ought to think, with different ideologies in different societies. Education can just demand teachers reinforce whatever ideologies dominate the particular culture one happens to be born into. This is often done in some seemingly benign way, as happens in the UK. Work for these exams with a curriculum set by the government, get a job, fit into the existing complex web that is the structure of society, and you'll be happy. Ask my 15-year-old grandson how he's getting on at school, and he simply says, it's boring. What an indictment of how we damage young people with the world at their feet. But education could also be seen as a way of enabling each new generation to have access to an overall sense of the enormous accumulation of knowledge we've amassed, and to have a sense of all the competing ideologies that operate for different interests. The students could explore and develop a broad knowledge and understanding of science, art, politics, technology, and so on. In short, to explore where we are at this stage of human history, and in particular to search for human agency in that process. The new, young, emerging adults could and should have a chance to locate themselves and begin to decide on their own agency. If we see science as the search for the laws of how the natural world operates, then the arts might be seen as exploring the experience of being human in that world and in the social world we've created. Drama is the art form that focuses on the problems we create for each other as we share this planet together. The art form of drama focuses us on the search for human individual agency in that process. But that individual search is always entwined in the social. Should Hamlet decide to take up arms literally and metaphorically against the feudal power structures dominating his family and society, or to adapt and meld in? In that very useful podcast by Chris Cooper, which is part of the material sent to you, he sets out very neatly an analogy of our work today. He's on the Pnyx, or in Greek, as Chris says, Pnycha. It is a hill outside Athens. Here, in ancient Greece, I'm sure the Greeks on here would correct me if I'm wrong, but here in ancient Greece, the first human democracy would meet to decide on the laws to be passed. 6,000 or so would attend, and anyone could speak simply by raising his hand and going to the raised area at the front. Decisions were taken by a simple majority. These voters were free-born males, only about 20% of the population, and no women or slaves present, but still an incredible advance to have this direct decision-making, and still far ahead of what we call democracy in the UK today, for example. But as Chris points out, they were not far from the Agora, where people met and argued and business transactions took place. And also, it was just below the Acropolis, which was the home of Athena, the patron goddess of the city, and where there were also temples to lesser gods. It had political and military significance. The point I'm pursuing is that the place where in that comparatively brief period of the first democracy, all the forces influencing the people were there to be found within sight. A point Chris usefully draws our attention to. It's a lovely image of drama needing to hold those social forces in mind as we seek human agency. Compare that to the way those social forces can be hidden, mixed up, lied about with decisions made behind closed doors in our modern world. The analogy for us is that in the simplest drama, all those forces also need to be accessible, or at least those that are relevant. And this provides a springboard for the human agency of our new generations. Our focus today is for each of us who are devising and leading these 5 sessions to share some examples of simple drama situations that put the participants in a living through experience, and then to argue for how they potentially contain key dimensions of the social world, the social order, for the participants to explore. This to aid the process of each person in the drama finding their agency in the world today. This has been the purpose of the bond sites and the handouts. And I think for the first time, Adam and I have drawn up a version for process drama. This will be the first time we've heard each other's scenes in a moment, and you can also compare what you've devised, especially with the person creating for the same age group you may have chosen. We'll have a short time for the other main contributors to comment on each other's work, and hopefully a short time at the end for anyone to comment. But we welcome any feedback, and you can please send that to Adam later. If we could get an international discussion going, that would be great. The whole question of human agency is complex, and I intend to return to this in a short contribution at the end. So I'm going to start. I'll work through the list of components to be filled in, which was sent to you all in advance, filling in my suggestions as I go. These components could be worked through, of course, in different orders, and all our work is work in progress. We're not seeking to provide blueprints for others, but to stimulate discussion. Okay. So the given I gave to everybody was 2 people sitting with a bag between them. So who are they? Who are the people who are doing the drama? I've chosen 17 or 18-year-olds. Where do they come from? And again, I've chosen 17 or 18-year-olds from a working class neighborhood that I'm working in the UK. The era, the present day, they're a young couple, mid-20s. They're in a park in a city on a Saturday afternoon. It's sunny, warm day. It's set in the present day in the UK, whatever they understand that to be. They're engaged to be married and very much in love. The bag they have is a very large bag, preferably one with a sort of mother care motif, full of baby clothes suitable for a newborn baby. A lot of money has been spent. So what's the backstory, the pretext I've thought of? They're a potentially high-flying couple, good university degrees in well-paid jobs. They're working class, moving into the middle class without being aware of that. They're not married. They've just put down a deposit with help from relatives and bought their own house on a government rent-to-buy scheme. In the fervor of lovemaking the night before, they've enthusiastically embraced the notion that it's time to start a family. And they spent the morning shopping for these baby clothes. This is a background that we would have built and shared together. So the tension I'm introducing, the specific objectives, is that as the morning's gone on, the young man has grown more and more uneasy as he's seen more and more clothes go into the bag. He's now wondering if it is the right time to start a family for all sorts of reasons. She is so happy, her heart is singing. He chooses this moment to see if he can find a way to broach how he feels. Now, I would probably decide here to give them that information separately, their objectives separately. So she's happy-hearted singing, he wants to, got problems with this really. Now, two areas here that are key is the angle of connection. And for me, that's always an existential decision. I can't do it without knowing who I'm working with, exactly where they are, what sorts of, I pick up all sorts of things from them as I'm working with them and so on. And that moves me often quite intuitively into finding an angle of connection for them and some exercises there. But the protection in the role, I can work out generally in advance. So just for an example here, without I haven't got much time, just take one example. They've been decorating their house. They've spread newspapers all over the floor. So this is, they're not actually going to act this out. This is an exercise, but get them to write the headlines that might be on the floor, or headlines of articles on the floor. So spread all over the floor in the home they're building is maybe an unrecognized world. It's a world they're standing on. That's it.
Okay, thank you, David, for setting us off with that situation, with your introduction towards the situation and sharing your situation. I think we'll proceed by going through the situations and then discussing them together. So I will continue with mine, as mine is the next age group, which is 14 to 16-year-olds. The situation I have chosen is I mean, the group I would be working with is a group in Budapest, in an elite school. This is a school, a very specific school where I used to work also, but I actually also went there. It was an ex-Jewish girls' school, and then grew into school for the intelligentsia of Budapest, and so it's a very sort of liberal and open-minded school, but also very high on the league tables. I would be working here with the students. I had these students in my mind, and the era I decided to work around would be a situation set after the 1968 Prague Spring, when the troops from Eastern Europe, including Hungarian troops, also entered Czechoslovakia, and they stopped the revolution happening there, the Prague Spring happening there. And my situation would be set in Hungary, but after this event, when there was a sort of political backlash on people in Hungary, politically, who were politically sort of aligned or in support of the Prague movements, freedom movements. I would set up a situation with two people in their mid-30s, either male or female, two friends, childhood friends, A and B. And A from this pair would be a person who, the bag they have is a bag full of books that have been banned or are illegal sort of to hold. So if they find those books at anyone's place, the police finds them, that would be enough cause to create trouble for them to lose their job, or it could be used in a court case against them. So the two people, A and B, A is bringing a bag of books to his childhood friend who is not active politically at all, and asking that person to keep these books and hide them for him or her. The B already has a family, so it's B's family home, and their partner, B's partner, is working in the Ministry of Interior Affairs, the Home Office. So that's why A thinks it's a safe place, because no one would search there. But of course, this brings in other pressures onto B, the childhood friend. And this is the basic situation I would ask them to work on, improvise, and sort of go through, build through. And the book would have the bag would actually have books in it. And the constraint I would give them was to use in the improvisation, to use the books in the bag to create time for themselves to engage with the dilemmas in the situation. But of course, their imperative is different. One wants to sort of keep the books safe. They're very valuable books. They're very hard to get, but he wants to keep the book safe, but also not keep it at his home because it might be searched in this purge, political purge that is happening, while the other person is putting their life or their family at risk by having those books. So they need to decide about what to do with that. So this is my situation. Then this is, as I said, for 14 to 16-year-olds. Okay. Should we continue?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. I think Kostas was your age group, the next one?
Yeah, well, yeah, if you want. I can speak a little bit, yeah?
Yes, please.
So I'm afraid mine is, let's say, more simple and more immediate, I would say, in a sense. This is what is happening. I'll start with the situation first, because I think it might be better for people to understand. There is a teacher, there's a school, high school, for people between 15 and 17, 18. And we are in the schoolyard. There is a teacher and a student. It's break time. The teacher has seen the student, the girl, using a phone, a mobile phone, during the break in the schoolyard, something which is forbidden. And he is trying to make her deliver the mobile phone, but she refuses. Now, what is happening is that the teacher is a newcomer. He's newly employed teacher, basically. He's 45 years old, but he newly employed in this school, and he's a language teacher. He's trying somehow to convince people, colleagues, and the head of the school that he is capable of putting order, of making children respect him and control them somehow. And the student, which is about 17 years old, she's actually not very much interested to school. She's one of the students of this particular teacher, and they don't have a good relationship. Actually, they don't care for each other. The teacher ignores her, or sometimes he's making some strange remarks on her. He considers her as a kind of a low achiever, average to low achiever. On her side, she's not interested in school. She wants to finish the school because she needs to find a job later. This is the last year, her last year. And she needs to find a job basically because she comes from a kind of a poor family in a place where financial crisis has hit families like that. Her parents are unemployed, and mostly they live out of the pension of the grandmother, who they keep at home with them. And the pension, of course, is very low. The grandmother is sick as well. I mean, she might die soon. And she has a special relationship with her grandmother.
Okay,
So she's keeping the mobile phone in order to contact her family and her grandmother and what is happening. Actually, many times she has taken care of She stayed at home in order to take care of her grandmother because their parents couldn't. Maybe they had some little job to do here and there. So she has lost many school days. So she's on the edge of failing the class. Now, the teacher is asking her to deliver the phone. She doesn't. She refuses to do that. But they don't have any relation. She doesn't want to tell him what it is about, why she needs the phone. On the other hand, the teacher is trying to prove himself in front of other students as well as other teachers who are present in the schoolyard. Now, this is a situation that I designed to do for children between teenagers, basically between 12 and 14, to lower middle class area in Athens, where financial crisis is still evident. Families have lost their income. There's a lot of insecurity taking place. And actually, what is true, it's real, is that the Ministry of Education a few years ago has banned mobile phones from schools. So it's strictly forbidden to have phones in school. I think that this is in general what I have.
Okay, thank you, Kostas, and sorry for the interruption. That was clear. I think I'm trying to make notes to keep all of them in mind in case you have a pen and pencil by you. Feel free to do that. And Chris will be next. He's designing something for 9-11-year-olds. So let's hear from Chris Cooper. I'll spotlight you.
Yeah. Right. So 9 to 11-year-olds, as you say, working in Balsall Heath, which is a very poor area of Birmingham with very high rates of migration and a transitory population. The era it takes place in is once upon a time. It's if you like a folk tale, it's peasant, perhaps even feudal. The ages of the two people, the one is an 11-year-old child and the other is a 16-year-old boy. The child could be male or female, it doesn't matter. Where are they? The immediate site, it's in the forest. It's early one morning when the child is heading for the border with the bag. The context is that it takes place in a kingdom where the crops have serially failed, the rains have not come, and the holy man has finally pointed a finger of accusation on the EK people, that's EKE, as being the source of dark thoughts about the kingdom, and that he's ruled with the new king that something has to change, that they need to change their ways and their beliefs. The EK language that they've spoken in the fields have been banned. And one day the king has declared that all newborn EK children were to be taken from their parents at 4 weeks old to the city to be raised as good, loyal citizens before they can be allowed to return at the age of 7. What's their relationship? Well, she is an EK villager who farms the plains beneath the mountains, and the 16-year-old is a young recruit to the King's Guard. What's in the bag? What kind of bag is it? A sleeping baby. The baby is hidden under some straw, which is presented as feed. The bag is a sackcloth bag, which is slung across the back normally. And on top of the straw is a gourd, which is filled with milk. So what's their situation, the background? I've sort of given you a sense of that. The fact is there's been a transition from the old king to the new king, and the new king is very different. I don't think I'll say much more than that at the moment. If you want more detail, I can give it. I've got quite an elaborate story here, but ultimately the child, who is 11, comes from a family whose newborn baby, the mother of the family has decided that she wants to deliver the newborn baby to a relative who lives on the other side of the border, and has tasked her eldest child, the 11-year-old, with disguising the baby in a bag of feed and taking the child to the border through the shortcut to the forest, saying, if anyone stops you, say that you're going to feed the animals in the meadow, and you know it's safer than me walking on the road because they're sure to stop us. It's in the context where soldiers now are controlling the movements of all the people. So in terms of the tension, she has to take the bag to the border where her uncle is waiting. Her story, as I said, will be that she's going to feed the herd, and she's using a shortcut through the forest. The child is fearful, and in terms of their objective, she has to do that. And I would give the objective separately to the pairs. And she has been told at some point to make use of the milk in the improvisation. And the other partner in the pair is the young soldier who's 16, a new recruit who has been is young, tired, hungry, just wants to get back to the barracks for a good meal and a good sleep, misses his mother, misses home, and the child, has been gathered along with others in the forest, and they have to be checked by the soldiers before they can go home. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Chris. That was clear and exciting as well. And it's Xiaoxi's turn from the middle of the night and in Beijing to tell us his situation set up for 7-9-year-olds. I'll spotlight you, Xiaoxi.
Yeah, my situation is again very simple. It happened in the airport during the I think I will set it between 2021 and 2022, somewhere between, under the zero COVID policy. So that's pretty much present. And the situation is between the father and the daughter. The bag between them is a suitcase. And so, I mean, I haven't really decided this is a carry-on baggage or just a general suitcase, because they're traveling. And there are lots of essential objects in the suitcase. So iPads, lots of electronic devices, some basic shirts. That's different season to what they're wearing now. So I'm setting them, I would set them in wearing winter clothes. So there were lots of summer clothes in the suitcase. The basic situation is that they're in line and the daughter is climbing on the suitcase, refusing to come down unless the father's pushing her like she was a child. When there was one of the early childhood memories of the daughter was in the airports and train stations that the father would push her and put her in on one of the suitcases. So, but this was refused this time by the father. So the constraints between them is that the daughter wouldn't go unless that she was pushed, and the father refused, but it was in line, so they were being watched by a lot of people. And one of the other cultural constraints for the father was, again, if you know a little bit about the Chinese culture, that in public space, you know, adults, parents would be expected to control your kids rather than showing how much you love them and how much you give them space to grow. Whereas that I will protect the father being into a father who is sort of embracing a kind of a new idea about raising a child, which gives child a lot of space. It's very child-centered. He'd like to believe that he's very child-centered. He will send their kids to drama sessions like this. But this is a very particular time. So the tension between them is that they were basically in this sort of a tug of war situation. And this was designed for 7 to 9 years old. And again, immediately that raised the question about whether they're able to handle the pair work. So I chose a rather extremely familiar situation for them. But it still, I think, raised a lot of questions about whether, how do we protect, particularly the father, the child who plays father, to be in his shoes. What else? I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thanks, Saushi. I think that's clear. I don't know if any of you have any questions about these situations, just the specifics of them. But actually, I think how we were planning to proceed now, David, was to start a discussion amongst ourselves about these 5 situations, and I don't know, David, if you want to start on that, or Kostas or Chris or Saushi, would you start on the reflection on these situations before we open it up for a more general discussion?
We've all gone silent. I mean, to me, I can see the possibility in all of those of finding a way very easily into the social order and the society they live in and so on, and to begin to engage with that and work out what's in them. But that may be areas that people want to ask or question or say a bit more about. I mean, what I forgot to say in mine, of course, it's so important to build in the constraints. You've got pairs work there, and I would guess we would do that. So in mine, it's because she's just, her heart is singing. How's he going to approach it? There's a constraint there. He can't just rush in and say, by the way, I've changed my mind. He cares for her. He loves her. He's got to tread very delicately. But what is actually going on as he thinks about the world he's going to bring child into? We haven't been able to look at setting up a whole drama and all the way into it. But I think I can see how they can all be opened up. But I mean, that may be an area we want to talk about or elaborate further.
Yep. Kostas, you unmuted yourself? Do you want to say something?
Well, I think it's a good idea to talk a little bit on difficulties that we may have faced while we were designing this. I mean, that might be helpful for all of us. I mean, one of the difficulties I've faced when I was doing this specific model that David has given to us, it's trying to find a situation which is not so closely related to daily life of children or not. I mean, I've chosen, I had some different ideas, different situations, but I've chosen to present this one, which is closer to what actual teenagers in Greece of that age group may experience in their daily lives in schools.
Why did you do that? Why did you choose this, Kostas?
Because it was very, very close, and I was wondering if this is a kind of a good choice in relation to choosing a context which is so closely related to their own lives, or not. Just as a question, I mean, obviously, I was influenced as well when I was thinking about today by Bond's play, The 11 Vests. you know, where there was a scene there where the teacher, the headmaster, is trying to stop the student going into the school. And I was trying to work a little bit on that and see, you know, how this could be in our modern context, and work maybe easily acknowledged, you know, from the kids that this is a situation they might have lived in. Now, I'm not saying that this is the best way or not. I'm just putting a question here. Is it interesting to work in a context where, a fictional context, which is actually so close to children's own lives, or is it better to create a kind of an analogy, maybe, or a distant context from their own lives as such? I don't know if anyone can respond to that, but this is my, let's say, my thinking while I was preparing this exercise somehow.
I'm quite interested in that, and I think there is a really interesting difference in a way in these situations, with Chris's situation being really like a fairy tale, or being actually a fairy tale, and yours being a very sort of practical, realistic situation in a sense. And I'm not sure that the difference is in, I mean, it's very evident in Chris's story that it's a story, and that we are working on a story. And for little kids, I think that's clear. But I think for myself, if there's this constraint which is related rather than to the situation, but also related to how to play the improvisation, that's why I included, which might be quite clumsy, about using the books in some way to create space rather than to express their opinion, to create space for themselves to engage in the situation. So can you include a constraint or a task in the improvisation that doesn't stop them improvising, but makes it more about creating a play, as Heathcote would call it, or a performance in that sense, or you know, being a theater rather than replaying their life situation? Because I think the difficulty there might be about them trying to solve the situation, or sort of vent their frustration at teachers that is there from their real life. But I'm not sure. I mean, I might be talking about something else than what you're raising.
Not sure.
My basic problem with improvisations was that kids kept on just trying to solve the situation rather than engage in it, which is very logical from their side. And it was my, you know, I wasn't capable of giving them good enough constraints to keep them, you know, in a situation that cannot be resolved in a way, or give them a reason not to resolve the situation. Yeah. Saoirse, Chris, any comments? Or David, go on.
But no, it just doesn't. It seems to me it can be any situation. I think Chris has given us a very useful, different sort of example, and I think these are decisions you make depending upon who you're working with, what their experience is, what how you want to work. To me, it doesn't. I don't think it matters, but I don't know what the others think.
I don't think it matters that much as well. I think it's really to do with, I mean, it's to do with so many other things as well. You know, their experience in drama, their age group, how comfortable are they in working in the group. I think all of these other elements are even more relevant than what materials that you choose. Although I think there's a problem with working with the situation that's too close to them, when that they couldn't help, particularly when they're in early years, drawing lots of their existing experience into it. I don't find it that difficult to make them stay in that constraint. I think that depends on how much you work towards it. Normally it takes a lot of time, lots of preparations for them to be able to handle that kind of commitment towards the constraints. But is the drawing of their own experience that actually, for particularly early years, that's difficult for me. So they couldn't seem to really work on it. To use Bolton's word, there are a lot of sort of things happening to them rather than them making it happen when we're not careful. But in terms of materials, I don't think that's I don't think it's a single problem with the materials.
Just a couple of points. I mean, my original idea was not to sort of try to begin to devolve a whole drama and a whole play and but just a simple scene. So just to try and not look at the how it might develop or where it might go, what's going to happen and so on, but just how to get a living through situation which brings in the social was just the simple sort of center of it. And in terms of the age group, I haven't got the experience, and that's why I think I said you may need to play teacher in role with a whole class situation here. But those who've got that experience in that age group, you know, I just haven't got masses of experience, anybody, very little experience of working with very young children. So that's over to you guys who have that experience, really. But you know, it doesn't need to be pairs improvisation. This was just to try and find a living through moment, but you could find something similar, I think, with a teacher in role and a whole class in role.
Go on, Chris.
No, I was just going to. I forgot I was on mute. I agree with everything that's been said in terms. I don't think the situation is the problem. It's how you bring the kids to the situation. So the kind of constraints that you make available, because we all know that the difficulty in any kind of improvisation, and it's not just young children. I mean, obviously very young children. You know, if I work with kids sort of 4 or 5, I tend to use teacher in role a lot. I think 7 to 9 you're on the cusp, depending on the context and their experience. I've done pair work with kids that young. In other situations it's more difficult, but I think it's all to do with improvisation, is that process that you're identifying there, Adam, about how you bring them into the situation, into the experience, but have enough constraints that actually stretch out time. And that's what it is for me. It's all about arresting time and stretching it to its absolute extreme, which both enables them to be in and see themselves in it, to really give them that potential for metaxis, but actually to bring all of their lived experience. So although my fairy tale may be far a long way away, I would imagine for most 11-year-olds, Stop and Search, for example, is very, very close to their lived experience in Balsall Heath. But it's how you access that lived experience to that dramatic situation. So although at one level it feels quite far away, in another level actually is very close. So you've got to have those constraints. You've got to find a way. But I mean, I've chosen probably one of the more climactic points of my drama. I spent quite a long time getting them there. I know that, in terms of building traditions and building that community, being able to bring them towards that point of enabling them to deal creatively with that problem. So that's what I was going to add, really.
Thank you. Matthew Milburn just shared in the chat comment. Would you want to say that, Matthew? I don't know if you're in a situation to be able to talk, but I think that would be really useful to engage with.
Yeah, I mean, I can do. I think they're all super examples. But when I worked particularly with teenagers, so sort of 12 to 18-year-olds, and in my experience, depending on the nature of the group, depends where you would want to start. And I think David was hinting at that. You know, you want to know who you were working with. You'd want to spend a lot of time reading the group. But I can see very much that the example, for example, of a mobile phone not being allowed to be used in a secondary school, the example Kostas gave, is certainly something that just about every teenager will immediately resonate, and it will immediately be something that they're saying, yeah, it's not fair, it's not right. So there's an immediate tension there, and there's an immediate hook, isn't there? So people, in terms of, you know, where do you start? For that particular group of youngsters, that would be a very quick win, a very easy way to get into drama mode.
Yeah, and if I could just follow on there, Matthew, hi, great to see you, by the way. Yeah, I mean, absolutely, they'd hook into that. And the skill there for the drama teacher is, okay, now how can you move that to open up what is involved in the social order? Why are there constraints? Why are there rules? Who makes the rules? Where does the regulations come from? Where is law? Who makes them? Who makes them for? You're out into all the key issues around how we live in society, who controls, who has the power, and so on. For me, that would be, but absolutely, they, as you say, they would go woof. Yes, talk about a lure. Yeah.
So Richard Holmes has a comment. Do you want to expand on that about moralistic conclusions, Rich?
I can. I was just saying that what was the 5 examples, what they veered away from was simple moralistic conclusions that you can just solve with a they should have a baby or whatever, which makes them rich and complicated, I guess, in that sense. That's all I was saying.
Okay, thank you.
Adam.
Yep.
I'd just like to, I think we could go into a really rich discussion, but I just got to keep an eye on the time. I've got about 20 minutes to contribution at the end, so if you can just keep your eye on that one.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if anyone else wants to comment or question or propose anything. Feel free to do it now. We'll still have time for discussion later on. David will have a longer theoretical explanation, and we can still continue the discussion after that. But if you want to directly connect to the situations, this is the moment to switch your microphone on. And
maybe some people might like to share their own thinking on, maybe they have an idea. I don't know.
I'm not sure about time, Kostas. Watch the time.
Well, it's 8 o'clock. I don't know. They can share it to the public, of course. There is Tara Bauer would like to speak.
Tara,
hi everybody. Very interesting conversation, and I'm just thinking a little bit about what Chris was saying about lived experience and that constraint with the dramatic. And if I've got that wrong, Chris, I'm sorry, but I have been given a project where I will be working with a group of recently arrived Ukrainian refugees, teenagers, who are obviously straight out of a very traumatic lived experience. And they have come to the town, which is, as everybody knows, globally, there's a housing crisis, but we have a very bad housing crisis in Ireland. And this is a working class town that I live in, there is not one rental. So we're talking about a housing crisis, a huge influx of refugees. The school that the group are in is a all-boys school that already exists in a very toxic, masculine environment. There's been behavioural specialists have gone into this school and come out saying, I would not go back in and work with these group again, with this school, even with the teachers. Very toxic masculinity. And so that in itself is, it's one project, but now you have these vulnerable Ukrainian refugees that are in the same school. And that is the task that I have been given, is to work with. And when I started out doing this homework or this task for this session, I hadn't actually thought about that particular group. And as we were working through all of the situation and the relationships, I thought to myself, why am I so afraid to apply this to this group? And that's been very eye-opening for me. And it's something that I'm at the very early stages of planning, but I would love to take these steps and start applying them to this group, as opposed to having this huge fear of my own as a practitioner of going, okay, there is so much trauma there and there is so much to contend with, that I'm making it this huge thing. So I'm waffling on now a little bit, but I just wanted to see if anybody had any experience in this way of working with refugees in the present moment, and if anything at all similar, it doesn't have to be the present moment, but at all similar to what I'm speaking about at the moment. Thank you. And if I've gotten on a different tangent, I'm sorry.
That sounds a fascinating and a really difficult task as well. I guess it really also depends not only on your choice of situation, but also on how you frame it for them, why they're engaging with it, and what to do, and how you can connect those different groups in their task. So what sense of connectedness can you create through the task they're given, for some aim to be achieved together?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, that's exactly it. I want these boys in this school, I want there to be that common ground. I want that connectedness, exactly. And so that there's that inclusivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a short response if anyone wants to give Tara a quick idea, and then we'll move on. David? Well, we'll leave that in the air, and we'll still have hopefully some time at the end to discuss, and we can digest that while we are listening to David. So David, I'll just ask you to proceed with what you had planned to share as a theoretical input here at the end and in the second half of our session. Is that fine?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just Tara, I think what you're doing, it sounds very, very important, and just so great that you're getting stuck in there. I mean, my encouragement would be to use the Padlet that we've got set up, and just send it out and start seeing what communication you get back. And there's masses of expertise online here. I'm sure you get all sorts of feedback and ideas, and you're right in the thick of it. I'm stuck here, well retired, well out of it, able to just spout on and all the rest of it. You're there right in the middle of it, so good luck with all that. And but I mean, there'll be stacks of people here can share advice with each other and so on. Okay, so shall I start, Adam? Yeah. Okay. So far, we've looked at setting up a simple process drama, where what I'm calling the social order, the social reality of our lives, might be accessed and explored. This is what the sites has been about. This is what the handouts have been about, and so on. And what is our agency in living in the social order? How can we find that agency? What do we want it to be? Those are the questions. Within this way of working, living through a drama situation, there are two complex areas I want to draw attention to. One is what is happening psychologically for the participants, and the other is, in seeking that agency, what is the relationship between reason and imagination? And by agency here, I mean how the individual decides to act in the world. And a whole series of questions spring out here. What values will they seek? What moral order will they pursue? What is the psychology involved in all the complex processes of seeking that agency? And when trying to sort out where they are in the world, is reasoning enough? What are the forces at work in all of us? How can we recognize them? Can we recognize them? Who is acting through us when we decide to act? That social order, I'm suggesting, is already deep within us. It has interacted with us and built us up to our eyebrows. The same process has happened to all of us. An overarching question involves asking, is there an objectively real social order? Is there a real to be reached? To my mind, there must be, but it's a vastly complex, shape-shifting, constantly changing and evolving mass that no one human being, in my opinion, could hold and understand in any minute detail. So how do we make a start? Here I stand alongside Freud and Lacan for the psychology, got myself partnered up there, and Edward Bond in arguing that our reasoning is not enough. So I've made sure I'm in a fairly strong corner. And in drama, I take issue with Brecht at this point. And so how can I start to justify my stance? I'll try. Please bear with me from here on. I'm trying to articulate in a new way what is new thinking for me. I can't make it as clear as I'd like, and I could do with all your feedback. But if it comes out as too confusing, then fortunately, you can't ask for your money back, as these sessions are free. So let me try. The individual student, the subject, if we follow Freud for a start, is not one entity, but made up of the ego, the id, and the superego. Or to paraphrase Freud's language for the moment, to relate it to how I'm using this theory here, the subject is made up of the me, that's talking now, the ego, the agent, the unconscious, the id, and the social order that's in me, the superego. And I'm leaving out the development in Freud's thinking made by Lacan here, as I think it would overcomplicate my exposition, and my points can be made using Freud for the moment. And anyway, I'm not an expert in Lacan at all. I'm not an expert in anything, but I mean, don't hold that against me. So my ego appears to be the agency in all this. What seems to be our center is our speaking voice, the me that's talking to you now. But this ego, Freud argues, is not master in its own house, and please forgive the outdated language. This was as much a shock to the world from Freud when he came out with these theories as Galileo's pronouncement that we're not the center of the solar system, nor the center of the universe, and was as equally shocking as Darwin's claim that we evolved from apes. The students working with are all then subjects made up of these interrelating dimensions, the conscious ego, the unconscious, and the social order. And I'll try to give an example of what I mean. Michelle Obama has just published her latest memoir called The Light We Carry. She describes it as a kind of toolbox and a collection of some of the perspectives and practices I've gathered over the years to help keep me centered. It has sold 17+ million copies, and she's been voted the most influential woman in the United States for 3 years running. Her ego, her speaking, writing self, is giving us advice on how to live our lives. However, she reveals she has a fearful mind. To quote her, "I've lived with my fearful mind for 58 years now. She makes me uneasy. She likes to see me weak." She admits there are plenty of mornings when she turns on the bathroom light and wants to quickly turn it off again. She can't bear what she sees. She reveals that she's always been insecure about her height in particular. She's 5'11". She was always placed at the back, never at the front in school photos. And to quote her words, "It created a small wound in me, the tiniest kernel of self-loathing that would keep me from embracing my strengths." The fact that she wanted to be at the front, to my mind, also reveals an unconscious side of herself that she either doesn't recognize or doesn't wish to share. And as the book proceeds, she reveals more of what I'm calling the unconscious, those feelings that arise unbidden for her, some of which she's identified with her ego voice. But she must also be filled with aspects of the social order. She's willing to serve the United States. She proclaimed she was proud of her country. She supported many progressive issues, but in the end, it was her country, right or wrong. This is the country of which Chomsky said, if the Nuremberg laws were applied today, then every post-war president would have been hanged. That was in 1990. Has the United States completely changed its spots? Or is it still a country built on oil and the profit motive, seeking world domination for its trade and primarily for the wealth of a tiny minority? My point being that Michelle Obama was also filled with the social order, making up part of her as a subject and an active agent, such as we are considering. If not, she would not have agreed to serve as First Lady for her husband. So the ego, the speaking child, the student who thinks she or he is in charge of him or herself is mistaken. other forces are already at work. Religious views, maybe misogynistic views in the males, or feminist voices in the females, or loudly assertive narcissistic dimensions springing from a sense of insecurity, of always being put down, and so on and so on. So many divergent voices, some from the social order, some from other perhaps childhood family experiences, are all in the unconscious. Yet the ego thinks it's in charge and can reason its way out. This is the dilemma. How do we help the students find a way forward through the art form of drama? Now, we've been seeking to develop an improvisation where the participants are living through a situation, being themselves and other of the role at the same time in a metaxis process. I would argue at this stage in my thinking that there are at least 5 levels of influence going on in these dramas. There are at least the conscious ego, the unconscious, and the social order in the student. And if the role is successfully engaged, then the conscious ego and the social order dimension in the role being played. I'm not sure about the unconscious of the role that's being played. In my example, the male 17-year-old student as himself might be aiming to be progressive in his thinking about women's rights and freedoms, but also thinking of having to give up playing on his Xbox or whatever, or playing football at weekends. His unconscious might be throwing up rows between his parents, and the social order might be suggesting parenting is for life, not just for the moment. The ego of the young adult he's playing might also, on the surface, be wanting to be sensitive to his wife's attitudes and desire for a family, but seeking to find a way to ask, can they really afford for his wife to leave the security of a well-paid job, and so on and so on. This is a pencil sketch, of course. I'm just trying to suggest there are complex dimensions to this role play, and that for teacher to think it's just a question of the student reasoning it out misses the complexity in the situation. And my criticism is that the reasoning voice, the apparent agent of change, is not in charge of the individual's thinking. Those who argue it is really need to take on Freud and Lacan. As Edward Bond says, the ability to reason doesn't make us rational. Reason doesn't ask why. This leads me to the role of imagination in relation to reason. Hamlet doesn't reason his way to action. It could be said that he imagines his father telling him how he died. This imagining leads into his reflection on his own agency, to reason, to be or not to be, and so on. I can imagine my death. I cannot get there by reason alone. My imagination is free to question and to seek. Following Bond, I'm arguing that we need to break open the way the role player is interpreting the situation at present in order to seek reason. This process is too complex for me to try to answer here, even if I could. I'm posing the dilemma. Adam Bethlenfalvy takes us towards possible answers in his book of his PhD thesis called Living Through Extremes in Process Drama. Let me at least try to offer an example of imagination, and do this by using a film. In a recent film made for the UK TV called I Am Ruth, Kate Winslet, playing a mother in contemporary society, trying to make real contact with her daughter. Now, the opening of the film shows her leaving her clothes on the beach and swimming out into the sea. It appears she's going to commit suicide. The sea is very rough. She keeps losing sight of the land, but she repeatedly glimpses the shore from the crests of waves, and then swims strongly and resolutely out to sea. As the film opens, she's seen failing miserably to make any real contact with her daughter. She loves her daughter, and she's loved back, but the gap between them is enormous. The daughter is being consumed by social media, being lured into posting provocative photos of herself and self-harming. From time to time, this same image of the mother swimming out to sea reappears. There's no explanation of this anywhere in the film, no connection to the narrative at all. Now, I see this as a sort of stimulation of imagination in another art form. I don't think you can reason your way to saying in any definite way what's happening in that image of swimming. One can speculate that she's all at sea and just swimming ahead without any sure sign she'll reach land. But I don't think you can reason your way to it by searching for a clear link to the film. But the imagination might lead you to reason. How to do something similar is still my search for living through drama. Now, I'm afraid I have to leave you with that. We've tried to look at how to make the social order available through the drama, and then I've offered some of the complexities facing the teacher in moving that forward. This is, for me, all work still in progress. Well, you'd better hurry up, I hear you say. To finish on a serious note, let us just remind ourselves of a dire warning from the UN Secretary General a week ago, following a report on sea level rises from the World Meteorological Organization. He said to quote, "Low-lying communities and entire countries could disappear forever. We would witness a mass exodus of entire populations on a biblical scale, and we would see ever fiercer competition for freshwater land and other resources. I am left with the horrific image of the many new Holocausts our children and grandchildren might witness as whole countries put up walls to keep refugees out. It's happening already. And the horrific image of the new gas chambers being people machine gunned down for trying to reach dry land. Now, this is my imagination at work. The search for a human agency is key to our work. Our drama's needed. Our work is more important than ever. And over to you.
Thank you, David. I found that really thought-provoking and also very useful practically, something which few people can do at the same time. So thank you for that. I'm just opening the space. We still have some time. That's how we planned to have at least 10 minutes for discussion at the end. So I have my comments, but I'd like to offer the space for all of you who have so generously, given your evening to this event. So is there anyone who'd like to come in and make comment, ask a question, reflect on what's been offered here by David or what's been said before?
Could I ask David, because I was trying to follow what he was saying about the 5 levels that are in play in any given role, in any given lived through experience. We talked about the conscious and the unconscious. Could you just take us through that again, only a bit slower? Because
sorry, I was really rushing to try and allow people.
No, I know, finish. But I think I'm asking you because I think what you're saying is extremely important, and I'd hate us to miss it or people to miss it without that. That's all. Would you mind? Is that all right?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, Chris. No, it's if Freud is correct, and if he's incorrect, we've got a lot of work to do to disprove it. It's almost accepted. That we're not, that the ego, the me that's talking now isn't in charge. I'm full of even though I think I may have sorted a lot out of my values and what I think, and so that masses of stuff is still in me from the history of being in Great Britain, British Empire, all the stuff that I grew up with. My geography lessons were filling in every section of the world that's red to show what the empire is. That's, now that's in me somewhere. All that's in me. So if Freud is correct, there is the ego, the speaking me that thinks, okay, this is the person in charge, this is my voice. But then there's an unconscious, in which masses of stuff is going round and round, and is not symbolized, is not actually it comes out to us in dreams or horror stories in our sleep or whatever it might do, but it's not actually, we haven't got a grasp of what's going on. And then there is that social order I talked about that's in me. There's those three levels there, but there must be at least two of those must be there in the role that I'm taking on. If I'm living through the metaxis process at the same time, I've got at least two of those so far as my speculation. So the role that I'm playing at the same time as me, I've got to imagine myself into a situation where what is the social order inside that person, you know, in that soldier, young soldier. Well, he's got his orders, he's got the social order in him, he's got the rest of it, he's got his ego, and he's got his, so there's at least those two going on there. I can't at this stage see how the fictional role would have an unconscious, but maybe there is there. I don't know. Maybe that is there. Does that help at all?
It does indeed. It just. Yes, that's very helpful.
Yes,
Thank you.
It just, no, to me, it just means that if you're working with groups, it's not just it, and we listen to that ego voice. This is what a lot of therapies become and counseling has become. This is why Lacan broke with the International Freudian Society, because they started to take the ego, the speaking voice, as the one that is in control and you can have counseling and psychotherapy and get that voice which sort everything out. And Lacan was saying, no, I mean, he went much further than that. I won't go into that now because even the bit I've got my head around and so on.
I'm just commenting on that, and then Stig will join in a moment. I would just like to reflect on that. For this for me is really related to the setting up part of the improvisation. So it would mean to me that when I'm planning the tasks to allow the participants to be in the improvisation, I have to be really conscious of both the social order and the ego part of the role to be sort of allowed to be built. And when I'm doing that, I should take into account the social order and the ego of the real as well. So I need to sort of connect the two in my thinking, but the tasks themselves need to allow the participants to step into these two elements of the role. Is that right, David?
I've no idea. I mean, I mean, I'm as I said, I'm just trying to find a new way into this area of thinking. It's the implications for practice, how it works. I mean, all I'm saying is they must be there. They must be at work. That, you know, and we can see this as the kid starts to play the role. You can see there's all sorts of things slips of the tongue, what he says, actions they do. Why did they do that? You can begin to work out what's going on and see, and you know, they must be around. So in terms of any, I don't know, it's over to you to see if there's any value in what I'm saying on that as a way of approaching it, you know, and then how you would deal with it. I don't know.
Okay, I'll come back to you with that in a few months. Stig had raised his hand, and then Evie as well later.
First, thank you,
Hi,
guys.
hi, Steve. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine.
Long time no see.
Really nice to see you again, and I really also wanted to thank you, the presenters, for a stimulating session. Very stimulating. To save time, I'm just wondering, you know, to the handouts you included. Sorry, you included the bond letter on Brecht, and I can guess why you did it. But I think that somebody needs to problematize that particular view on Brecht that Bond has been pursuing, and that some of you guys have continued doing, because in my opinion, I can see why you hold Brecht up as exclusively an artist dealing with reason, but it can be seen totally different, and you are degrading the complexities in Brecht. And by doing that, I think you are cutting off some really good traces, aids, structures, ideas of bettering, developing, improving process drama work.
Yeah, good point. Good to pursue. I can see you're passionately, passionately concerned about this, and yeah, it's very open up a very good long discussion. Good, yeah, sure.
And I wish, you know, when and if you continue claiming that Brecht has this side only, I wish you at least could read my stuff and see my arguments, and counteract them.
Send it. I'd love to send it to me, Steve. Yeah, sure.
Oh, it's been out there since 2009.
Yeah, but I listen.
You know, 3, 4, 5 articles.
Steve,
all the time.
Steve, give me a break. I disappeared from the world in the year 2000.
David, I'm not talking to you.
Okay.
Exclusively, I'm talking to the panel or to colleagues.
Yeah, sure.
Well, may I just add here, just because I was in the last conference of NATD in London, and I heard Stig talking about the same matter, and I followed all his workshops there. And that was very, very interesting to hear and to experience. I think that it's a good idea to start a discussion, which is bringing all of us together and not presenting one side of the argument in every case. Maybe I don't know if David Allen is still here, but it would be interesting to have a conference where people from all over, you know, for different views. I'm not saying only from Bondian or Brechtian or something. Let's talk about that. Let's see how our work of drama could be done, could work better in the specific context we're living today. And there's a lot of discussion around Brecht. And I think Stig's offer is very valuable, but there are other people also, I'm not talking about Bond, who actually challenged this idea of the Brechtian theater. So it's good for us to talk about this and have different views on that. I would be very pleased to attend to a conference where I could hear Stig, David, or Chris Cooper, or anyone else from this panel here, or from the people participating. I would love to take part in this kind of discussions. So let's try to do it.
Sounds good.
I think it's also sorry, Avi. It's also a question of the reception of Brecht, and not only Brecht himself, and that's and how that's been incorporated into process drama, which is also a more sort of aligned discussion for us. And of course, I just read David Allen's correction here, that it was the Dorothy Heskett Now conference where Stig was presenting, and also Matthew's chat about the AGM of NATD. I'm also a member, so I've already sent my apologies from Budapest. But let's hear Evie. Go on. You have to unmute yourself.
Hello, thank you very much for this lovely initiative. My question is also on Brecht. It is very much related to the comment from the previous speaker. So maybe I get that maybe it's not the right time to talk about it if there is another specialized event to be organized. But maybe I could say since I started speaking. So just very quickly, Professor David, thank you very much for your time and your ideas. So I'm not sure exactly what's your argument. I'm not sure about your interpretation of Brecht, and I'm not sure if that is the same as bond as bonds, right? So because you're the way I understand it, and please correct me, is that Brecht uses reason distancing in order to reveal, I suppose, ideology and awake a certain political consciousness. But in a way, you're saying that this cannot happen through reason because the unconsciousness cannot be accessed through reason. Is that correct? Is that what you're claiming?
Sorry, is this for me, Evie?
Yes, yes.
Okay. No, I mean, I think it's there's so much going on. I mean, we're trying to look, particularly in this session, looking at what I'm calling the social order, what those things that have formed us and made us in our particular cultures and ideas and so on. And there's been a lot of attempts to sort out by the ego, the me, that tries to, but there'll be a lot embedded inside that we don't recognize. And I use the example of Michelle Obama. You know, she is very clear. She's giving solid, good advice, good human. She's a good human being and all the rest of it, but she's embedded in the ideology, in my view, or she couldn't be doing what she's doing. So I don't see any way in which she recognizes. So there are forces working in her which she's not recognizing, but she thinks she's in charge. Now that is, I'm just trying to look at complicate the process of saying, well, there is just a rational reasoning voice that can see things clearly. To argue that, you've got to disprove Freud and then later on Lacan. So you've got a lot of work to do, I think.
May I add something, David, here?
Of course.
Have you? Yeah. Well, I think the question relates to how change is possible.
Can I just check if Evie wanted to come back on what I said? I was trying to answer her question.
I'm answering Evie.
Oh,
well.
okay.
So
sorry,
she can come back as well.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that the main question is how change is possible. I mean, Brechtian way of doing it is a different. It's this particular type of understanding the subject and how this subject could change. You know, how change is happening in the arts and especially in theater or drama. Now that relates a lot with how do you understand the subject, how rational is working, how reason is working, and how imagination is working. So we need to understand that in order to respond to such kind of things. I mean, and especially the rationality is challenged the last 50 years or more from different theories, not only from Bond. Yeah. I mean, even modern theories of posthumanism, for example, challenge this idea of rationality. So we need to understand if all these things are true, Lacan, posthumanism, or other stuff around, if these are true, I mean, if they're showing us a hint or a picture of what the subject is and how change is possible, then we need to use them to apply them to drama, of course, because drama, in my point of view, and I think all of the 4 other people here, is about change, how change is made possible. And I'm not talking about a change, a particular change we want, we imagine, we wish for the people, but a change in relation to how we understand the world, how do we understand ourselves in it, etc., etc.
But thank you very much, Kostas. You exactly. This is actually the bottom of my question. But of course, we should also ask ourselves whether change is possible to be orchestrated, to be directed, right? Yeah. So yeah.
Well, I think there is a lot of that going on. But anyway, I think I just want to stop with that issue there. Perhaps David Allen with will create some space in the next Dorothy Heskett Now conference for us to have that debate and all other sides being presented. We've had so much of that about that conference in the chat.
Adam, you know, I tried to get you to go to the last conference. You didn't come, so you must come to the next one.
I did. I'm sorry, I didn't have the money. Thank you. I did participate in the online parts. Anyway, I'm just opening the discussion, and we've passed our time. But if anyone, we can maybe add a few more minutes. If anyone wants to come in with any comments, steering a bit away from Brecht, but this whole question of change as well is really interesting as well, and the whole idea of how we understand the human beings or the person, the self works, and how that's broken up. I think that's a really interesting subject to discuss further, because that's the basic proposition I think I hear from what David is offering, to us having a different understanding of that. Anyone wants to come in?
I just
Helen, go on. Yes, yes. Come.
I thought the whole evening was fascinating. And what I really liked was the differentiation of the different age groups. So that for me was very enlightening, but I loved the whole evening. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Helen. I'll just stop there. We'll still hang on if anyone wants to follow on with the discussion. I'm sure to hang around for another 10-15 minutes, but I'll just stop the official part of the evening here. This was it was hosted by Insight Drama, and I think Adam Siboy, my colleague, co-founder of Insight Drama, is still here joining us from Bergen, it's been really great to have over 60 people from different parts of the world join us for this discussion and this evening. But I'd first of all really like to thank David for his immense contribution, and also thank Xiaoxi for waking up in the middle of the night to join us from Beijing, and Kostas and Chris as well, though they're cozy in the European time zones, so it was easier for them. And of course, thank you for your really useful contributions and comments. We'll just keep here for some more time, but this is already the unofficial part of the session, so just feel free to chip in, and maybe we'll switch off the recording if you don't want your words to be recorded. Thank you very much to Yulchi, my colleague in Insight, who's been doing all the technical part of the evening. Thanks, Yulchi, so much for that.